Hi, this is Tamara at mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to make the ball cactus from the crocheted Cactus Potholder set on mooglyblog.com. Please follow the link in the description below where you will find the written pattern as well as links out to all the supplies you need, as well as all the details on the pattern and both right and left-handed video tutorials. Let's go ahead and begin. We're going to need Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie in 2 colors. I used the lime and coral colorways. We'll also need an H-hook, stitch markers, these are by Clover, and a yarn needle and scissors. First, a quick overview of the pattern. This is the ball cactus potholder, and we start with the green colorway, color A, and work our body of our cactus. Then we come back, and from this angle, we add the little pot down here at the bottom, and then we add the flower and the edging all the way around. So we're going to begin with our color A, which is the lime green color. Now, row 1 of our ball cactus begins with 15 foundation double crochets. I have a separate tutorial that I've linked out at the link in the description for the foundation double crochet if you're not familiar with how to make those. If you don't like them or prefer not to learn, you can start with a chain of 17, skip the first 2 chains, and then work 15 double crochets across, working into each of those remaining chains. The point is, however you do it, after the end of row 1, you want to have 15 double crochets ready for row 2. So let's go ahead and move on to row 2. Now, row 1 was the wrong side. As we come back for row 2, that's going to be the right side of our pattern. We're going to begin row 2 with a chain 2 that will not count as our first stitch. Then we're going to double crochet in that first stitch. Oops, I went to the next one. Let's try that again. Double crochet in the first stitch. Since that chain 2 didn't count as a stitch, we need to put a stitch in that stitch for this pattern. Then we're going to work a front post treble crochet around the next stitch. So I'm going to yarn over twice, and then I'm going to find the next stitch here, and I'm going to go around that post from the front to the back to the front. Then I'll yarn over, pull that loop all the way back around, and yarn over and work it off like a regular treble, 2 loops at a time. Yarn over and pull through 2, 3 times. There we are, and that is a front post treble crochet. Then I'm going to double crochet in the same stitch. This is where we're increasing to start creating the ball shape. So normally when I work a foundation stitch, we would skip over that because that stitch already essentially has a stitch worked into it. Since this is an increase, we're going to go ahead and go right into the top under those top 2 loops as well. Oops, dropped my stitch there. There we go. So there's our double crochet. Then we're going to make those 2 stitches again in the next stitch. So I'll yarn over twice again, come over to this next post, go around it from front to back to front, pull my loop up and around, and yarn over and pull through 2 at a time. There we go. If your treble gets a little wobbly, it always helps to choke up a little bit with your non-hook hand, at least it does for me. Then I'm going to double crochet right in the top of that stitch as well, like so. So you can see we're starting to increase there. We've increased by 2 stitches, and we're going to start creating that ball shape. From there, we are going to work front post double crochet around the next stitch, followed by back post on across till we get almost to the end. So let's do that together. I'll yarn over, go around the next stitch from front to back, pull up my loop, make a front post double crochet, then yarn over, and then for the back post double crochet, I'll come from behind around my post. Again, I have a separate tutorial just on how to work post stitches, and I will have that linked out in this tutorial post on mooglyblog.com as well. Again, everything's at the link in the description. So I'm going to continue working front post around the next one and then back post around the one after that on across until I've got 4 stitches left in this row. So I will see you when we have 4 stitches left at the end of row 2. Okay, so I've got front post, back post, front post, back post, front post, back post, all the way across until I've got 4 stitches left to work into. Don't count that chain 2 at the beginning. That can be a little confusing. We just want these 4 posts left. Then I'm going to front post double crochet around the next one. There we are. And then I am going to work a double crochet followed by a front post treble crochet around each of the next two. So at the beginning where we did the front post treble and then the double crochet, at the end here we're going to do the double crochet followed by the front post treble. So I'll yarn over once and go ahead right into the top of that stitch for a standard double crochet. Easy enough, right? Pull up a little bit more yarn here, then we yarn over twice and go right around the post of that same stitch to make the treble crochet, the front post treble, like that. Then we do it again, double crochet in the next stitch, and then front post treble in the stitch after that. And finally, we should have one stitch left hanging out right there at the end, that double crochet we made right there. So we're just going to work another double crochet right into that last stitch. And that is how you make row 2. You can see we're already starting to come out on the sides a little bit there to start creating the ball cactus shape. So let's begin row 3. At the end of row 2, we should have had 19 stitches, and at the end of row 3, we're going to have 23, so we're going to have a few more increases. Once again, we're going to start with a chain 2 that does not count as our first stitch. Then we're going to double crochet in the first stitch, right in the top of that previous double crochet there. Then we're going to work a back post treble and a double crochet in the next 2 stitches. So we are going to yarn over twice, and then for the back post treble, we'll come from behind, go around to the front of the stitch, and yarn over and pull it through like so. And then of course, work those loops off 2 at a time, just as you normally would. So just as we did before, but this time coming from the other side. Then we need to double crochet right in that same stitch, the same one you worked around the post of. And then we do the same 2 stitches around the next post. So we yarn over twice, come around the post of the next stitch from back to front, pull up a loop, and it's okay to fold your fabric over to get to it here if you need to. Whatever makes it easier to finish off that stitch. It's a big tall one, so it's important to take your time with those. Then we double crochet right back in the top of that stitch as well. So similar to what we did in the beginning of the previous row, but we're maintaining the cables on our right side. So all those post stitches will line up from the front. After that, to continue row 3, then we are going to simply back post in the next stitch and front post in the next, back and forth alternating and maintaining those cables so they all line up, all those post stitches. So when you see a back post stitch, you work a back post stitch around it now. And when you see a front post stitch, you work a front post stitch around it. And we'll continue this on across until 4 stitches remain in this row. And these are relatively short rows, so I'm just going to speed up a little bit. Again, if you need more time with front post and back post double crochet, in particular, the video tutorial linked out is really great for that. The other front post and back post stitches, it's all just a matter of how often you yarn over before you begin the stitch. A front post treble and a back post treble are the same as a front post double and a back post double. It's just a matter of yarning over once more and then working off that additional set of loops. So you can extrapolate out from there. So I'm almost at the end of this row. Got just a couple more here. You can see once you get the hang of these post stitches, they really do go quite a bit quicker. And let's see here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches left. So I will work a front post double crochet there. And that finishes off the asterisk part. If you're following along on the written pattern, we have worked after the asterisk a back post, front post, back post, front post, repeating until 4 stitches remain. Then we're going to front post double crochet in the next stitch. There, because remember our repeat ended with a front post, so we need to back post once more. Then we're going to repeat what we did on this end, but backwards so that it creates that, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? When things are the same on each side. Symmetrical. Yes, we want symmetry. That's the word I'm looking for. So in the next stitch, we're going to start with a double crochet. Followed by a back post treble crochet. So we've worked into the top of that stitch. Now we're just going to come right around the post of it. Then we do the same thing again. Yarn over, double crochet in the next stitch. So right in the top there, under the top 2 loops, then back post, treble crochet around the post itself. Let's see here. So I should have some nice long lines there. And you can see at this point, we're getting a basket shape a little bit. It's starting to come up on the sides. That's going to even out as we go. So don't panic too much about that. Then here we are at the end. We've worked that last back post treble. So we just want to make sure to double crochet in that last stitch before we turn and come back for row 4. So that's row 3. And we're ready to begin row 4. Just going to pull up a little bit more yarn here before I begin that row. And then in this row is where we're going to start working even. At the end of row 3, you should have 23 stitches. So for row 4, we're going to maintain those 23, and we're going to establish the stitch pattern that will give us a little bit of height before we come in again for the top of our cactus. So we'll start this time with just a chain 1 and then a half double crochet in that first stitch. There we are. Then I'm going to work a front post double crochet around the next stitch. Here we are. Followed by a back post double crochet around the next. That will be the double crochet that's hanging out there, and it might want to try and hide behind, so be sure you get that one. And this row again is one where it will be important to count your stitches. So we just work back and forth, front post around the next one, back post around the next one. That's that hidden double crochet again. There we are. And then from here it should be a lot easier until we get to the other end. Just front post around the front post stitches and back post around the back post stitches. All double crochets for this one, except for that half double crochet at the very end, which of course we will use to match the half double crochet that we made at the very beginning of this row. So I'm just going to continue working my way all the way across here, alternating front post and back post until I get to the end, and then of course a half double crochet in the last stitch to match. So I will see you when we have finished up row 4. Okay, and here we are at the end of row 4. You should have 23 stitches. You can see it's a half double crochet at each end, and then there's a front post double crochet, and then we're just working back and forth in between. So we've got, you can see from the top here, we're maintaining those cables across so that they all line up back and forth. This is what will give us the thickness and squish for our pot holder. So let's move on to row 5, which is going to start with a chain 1 and a half double crochet in the first stitch. And then again, we're just going to work in pattern. So if you're not following along with the written pattern, you can actually look at your stitches to see what you're going to do. Here it's a back post in front of us. Now when we made it, it was actually a front post, but from this side, it's like a back post. So that's what we're going to work onto it. Another back post double crochet. This is what will maintain that shape, those cables, to give it that cactusy look. So then a front post in each front post and a back post in each back post on across until we get to a half double crochet at the end. Now these last 2 rows, row 4, which I just finished, and row 5, which I'm making right now, are the repeats that will continue to give us the height for our ball cactus. So after you finish row 5, then you're going to repeat rows 4 and 5 twice until you get through row 9. So otherwise though, they're identical. We're just working even, 23 rows per round, or excuse me, 23 stitches per row. That would be more accurate. And that will give us the height, and then we'll be ready to start decreasing at the top to create the top of the ball shape. With a little bit more yarn here, we're almost all the way across row 5. And then when I get to the end of row 5, like I said, I'll just cap that off with a half double crochet in the last stitch there, and then we'll repeat rows 4 and 5 through row 9. So after I finish this row, I will be jumping to row 10. So I will see you in just a moment. Okay, so I finished row 5, and as I was saying, rows 6, 7, 8, and 9 are just repeats. This is this section right here where we're just working evenly. After that, we go to row 10 up here, which is where we start making our decreases. So let's go ahead and set this aside, and on our little swatch, we'll move on to row 10 here. Let me put my hook back in my work. There we are. And we'll begin row 10 with a chain 1 and a half double crochet in the first stitch. There we are. Now we're going to front post double crochet over the next 2 front post double crochet stitches, skipping the back post double crochet in between. So let me show you how that works. We're going to yarn over and go around the next stitch. It's our front post double crochet right here, as if to make another front post double crochet, but I want to stop with 2 loops left on the hook. Then I'll yarn over, skip that back post right there, come over to this next front post and go around it. With 3 loops left on the hook, that's when I yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And this is a front post double crochet 2 together decrease. We've actually lost 2 stitches in terms of our stitch count because we didn't work into that back post, and these 2 have become 1. So after we've made that front post double crochet 2 together, then we skip the next back post double crochet, this one right here, and we're going to front post double crochet in the next stitch. Then we are going to back post double crochet in the next stitch and front post double crochet in the next stitch, alternating until we have 5 stitches remain. So there's a back post, and there's a front post, and then next is a back post, and we'll just continue this all the way across until we've got to the last 5 stitches left in row 10. So we'll work those together here in just a moment. Okay, so I've been working row 10, just maintaining the stitch pattern, front post and front post, back post and back post, until I've gotten to these last 5 stitches. So what I'm going to do is skip this next back post double crochet right there, and then I am going to work another front post double crochet 2 together over these 2, skipping the back post right there. So we'll be skipping this back post and this one. So we yarn over once, go around the front post, as for a front post, stop with 2 loops left on the hook, yarn over, jump on over to this next front post, and then when we've got 3 loops left on the hook, we yarn over and finish off. And then of course we need to yarn over and finish off this row with a half double crochet. There we are, and that's row 10. So we're starting to curve in a little bit for the top of our cactus, and we're going to continue doing that here in row 11. To begin row 11, we'll start with a chain 1 and half double crochet in the first stitch. Then we're going to back post double crochet in the next stitch, and if you'll remember, that was a decrease, I believe. Yes, that was a decrease, so we want to make sure that when we come around this stitch, we go around the entire thing, not just one leg of it. Otherwise, we'll end up increasing again where we're trying to decrease in the previous row. So I've got my back post double crochet there. You can see I went around the entire top of that decrease right there for that one. Then this one's a little tricky. I am going to back post, front post, double crochet 2 together. Let me demonstrate what that means. We're going to be turning the next stitch here, you can see, is a back post followed by a front post. I want to turn these into one stitch without messing up the cables from the right side. So what I'm going to do is yarn over and go around as if for a back post around this back post, and stop with 2 loops left on my hook from here. Then I'm going to yarn over again and come around this next one as if to front post. Here we are. And then with 3 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So that is a back post, front post double crochet. We've turned these 2 stitches into 1. We've just got 2 loops there at the top, 1 stitch to work into. After that, we're going to back post double crochet 2 together in the next 2 back post double crochet stitches, skipping the front post double crochet in between. So that big move we were doing before, we're just going to do it from the other side. Yarn over, come from behind around the next back post double crochet, stop with 2 loops on the hook, skip the front post, yarn over, come back behind this next one, the next back post double crochet there. And then with 3 loops left on our hook, we yarn over and pull through all 3. So that's another decrease. Then we're going to front post double crochet in the next stitch, back post double crochet in the stitch after that, front post stitch in the front post stitch after that, and then we're back to making our decreases. So we've got another back post double crochet 2 together in the next back post, 2 back post stitches, skipping the front post in between. So we'll yarn over, go around this back post stitch, stop with 2 loops left on the hook, yarn over, skip the front post, come around the next back post. With 3 loops on the hook, we yarn over and finish our stitch. Then we're ready for something a little different, but very familiar. It will be a front post, back post, double crochet 2 together. So just like when we did the back post front, we're going to do a front post back on this one. So we're going to yarn over, go around this next stitch, which is a front post stitch. So we'll go around it just like a front post stitch. Stop with 2 loops left on the hook, yarn over, and then I'm going to come around the next one like a back post double crochet until I've got 3 loops left on the hook. Then I'll yarn over and finish this one. There we are. Then after that one, we're going to back post double crochet in the next stitch. But we need to be careful, and I just did it because I only went around the one leg there. That was a decrease. I need to pull that back out and make sure I go all the way around that decrease in the previous row for this stitch. There we are. Like so. Then of course we can finish it off with another half double crochet to finish off row 11. So we can see from the front, it's always good to just double check. Our even numbered rows is our right side. So I always like to double check after making odd number row and make sure that all my cables have just continued working nice and straight up on this side. So we're getting a good curve there. We've just got a couple more rounds or a couple more rows here to finish it off before we start adding our coral details. Okay, so to begin row 12, we start with a chain 1 and a half double crochet in the first stitch. Sounds familiar? Then we're going to front post double crochet in the next stitch and back post double crochet in the next stitch. Now we're going over a decrease here, and anytime we work around a decrease, we want to make sure we get the whole top of that stitch, not just one leg of it, or you'll end up accidentally increasing again. So there's that back post double crochet, worked around that entire stitch right there. Then we're going to front post double crochet in the next stitch. And if we look closely at the top of this, I can see this is a decrease too. There's only 1 stitch at the top here. So I want to make sure I don't accidentally go around just this one. I want to go around the whole thing. And this is where counting your stitches at the end of each row comes in really super handy again. See, there we go. All right, so we've got that stitch made. Next, we need to back post, front post, back post, double crochet 3 together. Don't get scared. We're going to do it together right now. So we're going to be basically turning these next 3 stitches right here, this back post, front post, back post, into 1 stitch. So I'm going to yarn over and come around the next stitch as to back post, because it is a back post, and stop with my 2 loops left on the hook. Then I'm going to yarn over, go around this front post like a front post, because it is, and stop with 3 loops left on the hook. Then one more time, I'm going to yarn over and then come from behind around this next post like a back stitch. And this is where it can get a little wobbly, so just take your time, pull that loop up, flip your yarn or your project over if you need to pull that loop up nicely. Yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and then we'll have, you can see we've got 3 double crochets all started, none of them finished, 4 loops left on the hook. We yarn over and pull through all 4 loops to finish off that stitch. Go ahead and rewind that and watch it again if you need to. Then we'll move on with a front post double crochet in the next stitch. Again, this is a decrease, so make sure you go around the whole thing. I made that mistake a few times myself, had to pull that row out a few times when I was designing it. Then I'm going to back post double crochet around the next stitch. Again, this is another decrease, so make sure you go nice and wide with your hook there. Then we are going to front post double crochet in this stitch right here. And then finish off with a half double crochet in the very last stitch. Like so, there. Now, that should be the end of row 12, and if we did it correctly, we should have 9 stitches. So let's go ahead and count those together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Yay, we did it right. So that's the end of row 12. We've got 1 more row of decreases here in this pattern before we begin our edging, and then add our flower and flower pot and final edging. So let's begin row 13. To begin row 13, we're going to start with a chain 2. Again, this does not count as a stitch. This is just to give us a little bit of height in our turning chain. Then I'm going to double crochet in the first stitch right here, since that chain 2 didn't count as one. There we are. Then I am going to back post double crochet 2 together in the next 2 back post double crochets, skipping the front post double crochet in between. That should sound pretty familiar at this point. We're going to yarn over, go around the next stitch like a back post, stop with 2 loops left on the hook. Then I'm going to skip that front post right there, yarn over, come to the next back post, work around it like a back post. There, with 3 loops left on the hook, yarn over and pull through all 3. So that's our first decrease for row 13. But before we continue, I need to place a stitch marker in the stitch just made. You'll remember I mentioned stitch markers at the beginning. This is where they come in extra handy. We're going to put a stitch marker in that stitch we just made and come back to that a little bit later as we add our edging. After that, we're going to back post double crochet in the next stitch. This was our great big decrease right there in the middle. So we want to make sure when we come around there, we come around the whole great big thing with our hook and pull that loop all the way around and pull it a little bit tight, and that will really help pull that decrease in tighter too. Go ahead and finish that stitch off. It's just a regular back post double crochet. Then we're going to back post double crochet in the next 2 back post double crochets, skipping that front post double crochet in between. So we go around this next one, stop with 1 loop left on the hook, then we skip that front post double crochet, come over to the last back post double crochet there we are, like so, and then we're just going to finish it off with a double crochet in the very last stitch right there. So that the end of row 13, we should only have 5 stitches left. Let's see if we did that right. We've got our marked stitch, but that's stitch number 2. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. Now we're going to go ahead and chain 1 and turn for this one and work a single crochet edging all the way around the cactus, working a chain 1 at each corner. Now, if you've made the repeats, which I skipped, your cactus will be a little bit taller, but it doesn't really matter in terms of stitch count or anything like that, except for the very bottom row. And even then, it's easily fudgeable, if you will, which I'll show you here in a minute. One note, as you work across the top here, you do want to move that stitch marker up. So I'm going to go ahead and take it out for a minute, work this next single crochet, and then put it right back in. I will want to leave this stitch marked because this is where we're going to join our flower at the end. So just work evenly all the way around. If you need to work an extra stitch here or there for a curve, that's totally fine. Wherever you're comfortable working into the edge. I find working into the edge to be a little bit of an art more than a science, although there's some good guidelines like working 1 stitch into the side of single crochet rows, working 2 stitches into the row of double crochet rows, and then you have to mix it up a little bit sometimes for those half double crochet rows. Sort of every other one might get an extra stitch, but really it's just a matter of working into the edge so that it looks nice and so that your finished project works flat. So if you need to pull back a little bit, add an extra stitch to get around a curve, maybe take a stitch out if the edge of your cactus is starting to wrinkle up a little bit, that's totally fine. Like I say, the actual stitch count here isn't really important at all. It's just a matter of making it look nice. The only time I will be mentioning stitch counts again for this one are when we make the actual flower and when we're working into making the flower pot here across the bottom. But like I said, that's going to be pretty easy to fudge if for some reason your stitch count doesn't quite end up perfect there either. So when we're working around with our green, our color A, when you get to this bottom here, that foundation chain, this is where I would go ahead and chain 1 just to come around the corner and then just work a single crochet in the base of each of these stitches. This is another place that starting with foundation stitches works out really nicely because I've just got a really nice base to work these stitches into. But of course you can have started it with whichever technique you like. If you just did a regular chain and then worked under the top 2 loops, you might have just 1 loop here to be working into, but that's okay too. It's just a matter of what works best for you. So I'm going to continue making this single crochet edging. I think you've got the idea. I'll be putting another chain one here at this corner, and then just work all the way up and join to that first stitch I made, and then we'll be ready to make our flower and final edging together. Okay, so I have finished the green portion of our little swatchy ball cactus here. You can see it's a little bit smaller than the original because I didn't make those repeats in the middle to give it the height, but if you like it shorter, you can skip those and make a little one too. So we're finished with our green yarn, and at this point, I'm going to flip it over and we're going to add our little cactus pot right here. And for that, we'll be using our color B coral. Now, this is what I was talking about. This is where the last place I'm really going to reference stitch counts, except for the flower itself. But the point is really just to work evenly across the bottom here. If you have to add a stitch, take a stitch out, your stitch count isn't exactly the same across the bottom of your cactus, it's perfectly fine. It's just for the writing of the pattern that included a stitch count at all. It really doesn't matter how many stitches you have down there, as long as you like the way they look. So we're going to pick up our coral color here, our accent color, and I'm going to pick up my cactus and find that first edge there. And there's probably a chain one there, or that single crochet worked into the bottom. Wherever you want to begin, again, is totally fine. So we'll go right in this one here in the corner with our hook. And I'm going to pull up color B, our coral color of Scrubby Smoothie. Whoops, there we are. And just make a slip stitch to attach it nice and tight to our fabric. And then I'll chain one and work a single crochet right in that same stitch. There we are. It's a little tight, but that's okay. It'll be a little bit more functional that way. We don't want big gaps in our pot holder. So after that, we are going to work a front post single crochet around the next 15 or so stitches, but we want to end up with a single crochet to match this single crochet here in our end. So however many stitches that turns out being for you, that's a-okay. To work a front post single crochet, we're just going to go around the next stitch. Now, this is a single crochet, so we don't have a big post to work around. So it's okay to just go right under those top two loops and then pop right up under the top two loops of the next stitch. Then we yarn over, pull our loop around here, and yarn over and pull through to finish single crochet. And we'll do that 14 or so more times until we get almost to the end. Just go around each of those stitches and make a single crochet. This just gives a really nice edge to our pot. If you find this too fiddly or you don't enjoy it, you can go ahead and work standard single crochets right into the tops of the stitches too. But you just want to go right back into that one you came out of before, go around the stitch, come to the front, and work a single crochet. So I'm going to continue this across until I get just about to the end, and then I want a single crochet in the very last stitch of my bottom here to match this one. And like I say, this is mostly about visuals, so however many stitches are needed to make it look nice and flat, like a little cactus flower pot there at the bottom, is totally fine. So I'll make a few more of these, and I will see you at the end of row 1 of our cactus pot. Okay, so I've made a single crochet, 15 front post single crochets, and then I just wanted to point out, because of the way these work, that last stitch is the one we popped out of to make that last one there. So we just go right back in that space to make that final single crochet. There you are. So you can see how that looks, and that will give us 17 or however many you need to get across the bottom of your ball cactus. And I just want to show you too how that looks from the other side, because those are post stitches. There's a little bit of color action happening there from behind, but that won't be a problem from the front of our cactus, of course. Then we begin row 2 of our cactus pot. Very simple. We're just going to chain 1, work a single crochet 2 together. So we go into the first stitch, pull up a loop, then go into the second stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. That's a single crochet decrease. Then we're going to single crochet on across until we get to the last 2 stitches, which, if you may have guessed, will be a single crochet 2 together as well to mirror this side. We just want to make sure that each side of our cactus is symmetrical. So that's why we put decreases or increases or whatever it is on both ends of every row. So I'll just zip through these here. We're just working under the top 2 loops. So simple single crochets on across. And if you did have a 17 stitches, then at the end of the previous row, at the end of this one, you'll have 15. So I've gotten to those last 2 stitches there. So I'll just go into the first one, pull up my loop, go into my second one there, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through to finish. So that's the end of row 2. Row 3 is exactly the same. Begin with a single crochet 2 together, and then single crochet on across to the last 2 stitches. The big difference is at the end of this row, we'll be cutting the yarn. This is it for our flower pot. I know it looks kind of anemic right now, but we're going to add an edging with the coral too. And of course that will add a whole nother row of single crochet across the bottom, and it'll firm up the sides here too. So I'm almost there. So we'll go ahead and finish this together before we begin our flower. Just a few more single crochets left. You can hear well, maybe you can hear, I can hear the little stitch marker tapping on the bottom of the table. That will come in later when we add our flower. So we've got 2 stitches left here in row 3. So we'll just yarn over, pull up our first loop, yarn over, pull up our second loop, yarn over, and pull through all 3 to finish off. So that gives us just a little bit of an angle for our flower pot there too, which of course will be this way on the finished cactus. So at this point, I can break my yarn. Again, make sure you leave enough to weave in your ends later when you're all done. And I'll go ahead and pull that through like so. And now we're ready to make the flower and our final edging. So I'm going to set this piece aside and come back over here to our color B, our coral scrubby smoothie. Now this flower begins with a magic circle. If you're not familiar with the magic circle, I do have a separate tutorial for that on my Moogly blog YouTube channel, as well as linked out in the tutorial that is linked in the video description here. So a couple different places you can find that if you're not familiar with the magic circle. So I'm going to go ahead and begin my magic circle here. I always like to start with 2 loops around my finger. Pull that first one up to the front, then yarn over and pull through to secure it down. And then I'm ready to work 5 single crochets all into the ring. So after I've chained 1 there, I'm just going to go right back in the ring and make 5 single crochets. And I want to make sure I work around both strings of this magic circle so that it will cinch up when I'm all done and do the magic part. So with 3 single crochets worked around there, I can probably pull my finger out there. It's nice and secure. We'll work 2 more single crochets. There's 4 and 5. There we are. It can be a little fidgety, so be sure to stabilize your ring as you single crochet into it there. Then we've got 5 stitches made, so I'm going to go ahead and take that little tail and pull, and that will close it right on up. And then before I join, I'm actually going to take my stitch markers again. I get a contrasting color here. And actually that looks exactly the same on camera, doesn't it? It's a little different to the naked eye. There we go. This will be easier to see. I'm going to go ahead and put a stitch marker right in that very last stitch I made before I join, because when working in rounds or, well, in any sort of round, but particularly when making circles or ovals, it's very easy to mistake that slip stitch I just made for one of the stitches and end up working too many stitches into this round. So by marking that last stitch, it just makes it that much easier to find each stitch that I need to actually work into. So now we're going to begin our flower petals. We've got the center of our flower, we've got 5 stitches, there's going to be 5 petals. Each petal will be made into one of these stitches. And this is the repeat for each of those. We chain 1, then we double crochet in the next stitch. In this case, for the first one, it's this very first stitch. Then we work 2 treble crochets right back into that stitch. So we yarn over twice, go right back in that same stitch, make a treble crochet. Oops. There we are. Only want to work through 2 loops at a time. Yarn over twice again, go right back into that stitch for a second treble. There you go. Go ahead and take your time with those. They can be a little fiddly. Then we're going to double crochet right back into that same stitch, like so. Then we chain 1 again and slip stitch 1 more time right back into that little stitch. There we are. And that is our first flower petal. So we're going to do that whole thing over again. Start with a chain 1, then we double crochet in the next stitch. This is where we finally move on to that second stitch. And then 2 trebles. So yarn over twice, make the first treble, yarn over twice, make the second treble. Okay, pull up a little bit more yarn here. Double crochet right back in that same stitch, and then chain 1 and slip stitch right down in there. So that is our second petal. We've got 3 stitches left in our ring, and as you make these petals, let me try and pull this out of the way, it can be very easy to sort of lose that next stitch right there. So you want to make sure that you don't end up accidentally skipping any stitches. Although if you do, for some reason, and you like your last 2 petals, go ahead and work that 5th one in the slip stitch then. I won't tell. But at any rate, you just want to work 5 petals, 1 into each of these stitches around. And then I will see you again when we've made that 5th petal, which will, of course, hopefully be in that marked stitch. And then we'll be ready to work that final edging around our cactus. So I'm going to keep making petals. You should too. And I'll see you when we're ready to move on. Okay, I did it. I ended up with my last petal in that marked stitch. Hopefully you did too. So I've got 5 petals made, and I've slip stitched into that last stitch, finishing our last repeat. Now I'm not going to join to the first petal made. Instead, I'm going to pick up our little cactus again. And this is where we want to look for that marked stitch. So you can just go ahead and leave the stitch marker there if you'd like, and insert your hook. Again, it's just hanging on that last loop from our flower petal. I'm going to insert my hook right in that marked stitch. And then I will go ahead and pull that stitch marker out because it's going to be in my way. And then with my working yarn, just bring it behind my project and make a single crochet. And I want to pull down on the yarn here a little bit so that this doesn't end up being a real loose or floppy single crochet. I want it sort of tight right down on top of the cactus there, like so. And that is how we attach the first edge of our flower. It's a little floppy now. We're going to come around and catch it up on the other side here. So I'm just going to continue in the meantime though, making single crochets in each of these stitches around our cactus. This is going to be our final edging. Now, because this cactus has some curves, you might get to a point where if you just work 1 stitch in each stitch, the fabric might be starting to curl up, either pulling down this way or this way, and it's trying to shrink up a little bit. So if you find that, it's okay to pull back your stitches to wherever that's happening, and right in the middle there, or right along the edge, or wherever you think it might work, just play with it and try putting 2 single crochet stitches there, and that will give you that little extra oomph to get around the edge there. That'll help you create that curve. So I'm just going to work a single crochet in each of these stitches here. Very simple because we've already worked our green edging. The only time I really need to worry about working to the edging, so to speak, for this edging is when I get down to the flower pot, where I'll be working into the sides of those stitches. However, those are single crochet rows, so 1 stitch in the side of each of those rows should be plenty. So just find the sides of those rows right there. And, you know, working into the edge can be fiddly. There we go. That one didn't want to come through. There we are. 1. Let's put 1 in the side of this row here. And it's okay if your stitches are a little tight here. Again, this is a pot holder. You don't want it, you know, crazy, drapey or anything like that. And then when I get to the end here, I might do another chain 1 and then just single crochet right across that bottom row. Just that chain 1 just gives us that little bit sharper corner and helps us turn it a little bit easier, sort of like adding an extra stitch, but without adding the extra bulk. I find if I want a really, really sharp corner, I can chain 2, and that creates a little bit more of a 90-degree angle without creating really any significant bulk, but it's whatever you like at this point. Just make your chain so that you like the way it looks. Again, stitch, or your border, I should say, not your chain. Make your border so you like the way it looks. The stitch count definitely does not matter one bit here. It's just a matter of making it all lay down and look nice. So I'm working up the second side of the pot here, and I'm almost, well, I'm a little over halfway, so I shouldn't say I'm almost done, but I'm a little over halfway. I'll be done soon enough. And when I get back up towards the top, like I said, I'm going to be crocheting a little bit more into the flower to help anchor it down. But what we want to do is stop when we've got 3 stitches here at the top. It'll be behind our flower, actually unworked. So we can count back 1, 2, 3. And if we want to, we can put a little stitch marker right in that 4th stitch, counting back here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll know that this is the last stitch we want to work our edging into before we join the flower again. So that just puts a little bit of the brakes on there. If you find you've gone too far, you forgot to attach the flower, as long as you haven't woven in your ends, not a big deal. You can just pull those back out. Let me find my working yarn there again. We're back up to the green, so it should be pretty quick to just Work a single crochet into each one of these, again adding an extra one when you need to get around the corner. We're so close though. And of course you'll have more stitches up the side here if you've made your full size with your rows 4 through 9 repeats that we skipped for our little swatch one here. But I think this is really cute. It's a little wonky. I should have probably added some more green stitches. You can see it's bowling a little bit. It's trying to create sort of a bowl shape. I should have probably added a few more green stitches, but this was just our little demo swatch, so I didn't take as much time as you'll take with yours, I hope. But you can see like right there, I would add another extra stitch just to get around that corner a little better. Or rather not corner, but the curve. We don't want to do the chains here because that does create the corner look, and we just want a nice smooth curve up the side of our cactus. So I am almost done babbling at you since we've made our way around here again. I finished up there with that marked stitch, and now we've got those 3 stitches of the green left unworked. And this is where we're going to go ahead and attach our flower. So I'll pull up a little bit more yarn to make it easier here. There we are. And we're going to come back and look at our flower for a minute. So let me put that down and look at our flower. Now the flower, it's been flopping around all over as I made that edging, so it can get really twisted and stuff. But you want to try and straighten it out and look at the top 2 loops of that first single crochet you made, just to make sure that it isn't turned around, that you haven't completely twisted the whole thing. Like if you twisted it up around like this, and then you came over and looked at this, you'd be able to see that's all twisted and crazy. So just untwist it, get all your little ends out of the way there until it's a nice smooth transition. Now, by doing that, we can also tell this is the last flower petal we made and this is the first one. So we count to the 3rd petal we made. 1, 2, 3. That one right there is naturally. You can see how that's the one that we want to attach right there. So to attach it, I want to look at that 3rd petal itself and find the 2nd treble crochet we made. So remember, each petal has a double crochet, 2 trebles, and a double. We want to find the 2nd treble, that one right there, and I'm going to, this is a little fiddly, I'm going to pull down my hook so I don't have that too much of a big loop there, although I can pull it down again if I need to. Then I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to go around that 2nd treble as if for this would be a back post stitch. So from the back to the front to the back again, just like so. And I'm going to yarn over and do a slip stitch. So I'll pull that loop through, and then I'll just pull that loop right on through the top of my stitch there. Oops. Pull that loop up a little bit for my hook. There we are. And you can see that that back post slip stitch tacked down that side of the flower without adding any weird bulk or anything. I think it looks pretty nice. So after that, we just want to come back here to our green stitches that are remaining unworked, and again just pull that loop down nice and tight on your hook before you begin those 3, and make each of those final 3 single crochets. So there's 1, 2, and 3, like so. And now you can see from the front how tacking down that 2nd treble really does work out to just the right spot, like so. Now, from here, we're all done crocheting. It is time to finally cut our last end of yarn. Again, make sure you have enough to weave in the ends. And you'll notice too, I didn't join at the end there with my crochet hook. Rather, I'm going to pull that yarn on through, put my yarn, my crochet hook down so it doesn't roll off the table. There we are. Now, where did that end go? So I've pulled that end on through, straight through, so it's not joined, but I will do that with my yarn needle as I weave in my ends. So I will take that final little edging right there, and then I'm going to find that first single crochet we went through, and I'll just go ahead and sew right to that first single crochet of our edging. So go in there with that yarn, come back into the stitch I just made, and that will cinch that up. Now, as I continue to weave in this end, rather than trying to hide it in this edging, the easiest thing is just to hide it in the flower, which has the bonus effect of just tying and securing that flower down to your pot holder that much more securely. So I'll just go ahead and weave this end right in along the flower, and I'd go back and forth several times, several different directions. These are kitchen items. They tend to get a lot of use and a lot of wear and tear, so I want to make sure that my ends are woven in really, really well. But I would just keep going around, working into that flower a little bit, and we'll pull up the original here, and you can see from behind how securely that flower, I've really just kind of sewn it into all these stitches across the top. And you can see how our pot looks here with all our ends woven in. This is from the back, so here it is from the front. And that is how you make the ball cactus from the Crochet Cactus Potholder set on mooglyblog.com. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it has helped you make your own crochet ball cactus potholder. Be sure to check out the link in the description again. That will have the written pattern for this cactus potholder as well as the taller style of cactus potholders. You'll find video tutorials, links to all those supplies, and everything you need right there. I want to point out too that while this pattern was made with Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie, one of the most important parts of making this pattern in this yarn is that it was 100% cotton. I love this yarn. It's got fantastic color and color fastness, but make sure whatever you use when you make your potholders is either cotton or wool, because heat can make acrylic melt, and I don't want to see anybody get hurt. I want to thank you again so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.